Meltzer's going to report that there's some bad news for Titan Sports and that the criminal indictments against the company have been rewritten with 2 additional charges being added, bringing the total to 5 counts, 3 against Vince and 2 against Titan. Both new counts are similar, charging both McMahon and the company with possession and intent to distribute anabolic steroids on April 13th, 1989. And in the count against McMahon, the indictment will claim he knowingly and intentionally possessed, with intent to distribute to a WWF performer known to the grand jury, a substance containing anabolic steroids for use in humans other than for the treatment of disease. So, we're knee deep in the middle of this mess, with Zahorian and all the fallout. And the real push here is what the government is going after. The additional 2 indictments increase the maximum penalty against McMahon upon conviction from 8 years to 11 years in federal prison in the trial currently scheduled for July the 5th at the Nassau County Courthouse in Uniondale, New York. The amount of potential fines against Titan Sports and McMahon with the added indictments are $2 million. And the most damaging potential penalty, the government's attempt to seize Titan Towers, the WWF's $9.5 million office complex in Stamford, was dropped a few weeks ago, as was widely reported. Titan's lawyers have a hearing on April 29th before Judge Jacob Mishler in an attempt to get the case dismissed before a trial. So I guess it's good news that, hey, they're not coming after the building anymore, but they're still piling on these counts. This has got to be the most stressful time in Vince McMahon's entire career, is it not?
Without a doubt, because at this point, the government was just grasping at straws. They realized that they didn't have a case. They realized that everything that they were doing was just a witch hunt. They weren't getting any evidence. They weren't getting anything substantial. Got a lot of hearsay, rumor, and innuendo and bullshit, but nothing that actually added up to anything. There was no illegalities. It was just something that they kept trying to trump up more and more charges. So if you have one that may seemingly look like, okay, there might be a little smoke over here, well, let's file another one very similar to that. Now there's going to be 2. Same charge, same shit, same everything, but different name. And let's try that, because then it'll add up. It'll make it look worse. And that is what the federal government just continued to do. They just kept trying to intimidate. They kept trying to add things that were just erroneous and completely false to try and make their case look stronger and look bigger in the public eye. And it was bullshit. And it quickly got thrown out and it was laughed at, which is another reason that so much of this is everything got closer and closer to the actual trial taking place, that the government was just losing face with the judge, with court, and everybody else, because they're going, what do you really have? Do you have anything? And they were quickly finding out that they had a house of cards.
Let's keep it moving here, because this is obviously, the basis of the entire, this is really what in this era, the newsletter spent most of their time talking about, as well they should, but we've done a whole episode on the steroid trial, which is available in the archives. You can check it out now, somethingtowrestle.com. But I do want to mention that, once they got digging here, it becomes, as you said, a house of cards, and they're just grabbing it, whatever, including a report on April 22nd in the New York Daily News saying that Vince McMahon ordered Howard Finkel in February of 90 to take an HIV blood test on behalf of Terry Bollea. So fraudulently, because it's required by the state licensing authority. And this makes all the New York radio and TV media throughout the market that weekend. And they start to do stories on a current affair and everything else. Don't get me wrong. I understand, that at this point we're just trying to dig up anything we can, but fresh off of, and maybe some folks are too far removed from that era or too young to remember it. But when Magic Johnson got HIV, it created a whole new awareness, in America, at least with a different section of America. And the idea that now, you know, there's a report that someone had to take an HIV test for Hulk Hogan. My goodness, people are going to jump to some crazy conclusions on that. Are they not?
Well, okay. A report from whom?
Right.
A rumor, a bunch of bullshit. And, internally, never heard that, and heard it externally, which is laughable, because if anyone that ever has known Howard Finkel, I believe they called him a loyal lieutenant. Yes, Howard would do anything, but the last thing that Howard would do would be lie, and the last thing that Howard would do would put himself in a position where he would have to testify, or where he would have to do something. He couldn't do it. Howard would break. He couldn't do it.
Right.
And I don't think that Vince would ever put him in that kind of a position to do something like that. So it was rumor. It was nasty. It was mean spirited, but it was another tactic to get people to say, hey, look at these dirty bastards. Look at this shit they're doing. We have no proof of this, but I'll bet you that they had Howard Finkel do it, because Howard doesn't do drugs. Howard doesn't do anything. He's a loyal soldier. He'll do whatever Vince McMahon tells him to. And that evil bastard probably told him to do it. That's just bullshit.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the result of the report, though. A current affair starts to freestyle, Hulk Hogan has AIDS, which is just insane. But they turn this one little report into a 6-minute story, and they even go interview David Schultz, and they're asking him, hey, did you, because they're trying to freestyle, well, how did he get AIDS? So there's a real AIDS hysteria after Magic Johnson, where people who weren't talking about it wasn't on anybody's radar. Now with Magic Johnson, more people know about it than ever before, and it's just it's a fear. Oh, you can't drink after someone, and oh, wash your hand. It was a weird hysteria in America where people just didn't really understand it. And so they're freestyling a current affair here, and they're saying, oh, did he share steroid needles with anyone? And it's just unbelievable to me that they jumped to the conclusion, oh, well, that must mean Hogan has AIDS, and they didn't want anybody to know.
Right. And, you know, there was that hysteria. I remember even in the gyms during that time, every machine had a spritz bottle of disinfectant that would guard against any disease-borne illness and shit. And after every time you worked out on a machine, you had to use their wipes and spray it down and clean everything off, because if you got someone else's sweat on you, you would get AIDS. It was hysteria. It was blown out of proportion. We didn't know a lot about it, and it was scary, because you did know we weren't nearly as educated on the disease as we had become later on. And I think that people would play on that hysteria to just instill fear wherever the hell they could. And if you could say, oh, wow, look at Hulk Hogan. Well, he's doing something there wrong. And if Magic Johnson,
right,
you know, the NBA sweetheart, has got HIV, then, oh, yeah, Hulk Hogan's got to have it. And that was actually the rationale.
Unbelievable.
It was ludicrous.